Spider-Man 2 has been out for a few months, and they have clearly set up sequels for the game. So today I'm going to give my pitch for Spider-Man Miles Morales 2. Yeah, people think Peter retired and that they're just going to give Miles that title, but I don't think that's going to happen. Here's my pitch. I'll talk mainly about the story, but I'll talk about some side missions and possible DLCs and some other things like that. So, let's begin. So before I deep dive into the story, here's the basic story of the game. Basically, Kingpin was freed, probably because of money, we don't really know. But he hires a bunch of assassins to get rid of the Spider-Man. Cindy Moon / Silk was one of the assassins, and she easily finds out about Miles' identity, so she manages to get her dad to date Rio to find a connection. She knows Miles from school, and that will tie into things later. I'll explain how Peter will not get in the way when I deep dive into the story. So now, let's begin. The game would begin with Spider-Man and Miles. By the way, I'm just going to call him Miles so you don't get confused. Anyway, the game begins with Spider-Man and Miles fighting Morbius. He'll summon some little shadow henchmen for you to fight, and you'll work together and defeat him. That'll be like the opening fight, or opening boss fight. But Morbius actually escapes, and that will be important later. We see from a distance that Silk / Cindy Moon is watching them. Basically, we see Peter going home and sucking face with Mary Jane, and then Silk goes into their house because she followed him and beats up Peter, and I mean like injures him really badly because she catches him by surprise, and yeah. So that's kind of the cold open of the game. The next scene would be something like Kingpin unpacking in his office, and we get a scene explaining why he's back, and we can maybe even get a flashback of it. But all that matters is that the audience understands that Kingpin wants the Spider-Man out of here so we can continue doing his devious activities. We would see Miles, Genki, Haley, and Rio at the hospital with MJ. MJ would tell them that he was attacked by some girl that has the same abilities that he has. We would then have a scene of Cindy and Albert Moon eating dinner with Rio and Miles. They would have a nice conversation, and then after it's over, Cindy and Miles would have a talk in his room. I think Cindy would try to hit on him, but Miles would reject her. Again, she's trying to do this. She's trying to get with him so she can get closer with him and kill him, since she failed with the last Spider-Man. Miles starts to swing around and do superhero things when Genki messages Miles and is like, "There's news reports of Spider-Man committing crimes." Miles goes to this warehouse where a lookalike Miles is beating up these random criminals with guns. This lookalike is Chameleon, who was set up in Spider-Man 2. Miles defeats Chameleon and interrogates him. Chameleon explains that he got an alert from Kingpin about this Spider-Man bounty, and that's the reason he was in New York in Spider-Man 2. So basically, in case you have not played that side mission in Spider-Man 2, we find out Chameleon is Kraven's half-brother. So in my story, the reason he was in New York is because of the Kingpin stuff. So after finding out Kraven is dead, he wants to make Spider-Man look bad and kill him for the bounty. So he was going to get this package from Kingpin at this warehouse and dress up as Spider-Man and start slowly ruining his career. Miles opens this little secret base that shows a bunch of special suits. We see a white suit for Chameleon, 2 missing ones. One for Morbius, one for Ringmaster, Vermin, and Carnage. The 2 missing ones are for Silk and Deadpool. So those are all the assassins, and we'll go into more detail with each of them when we get to those guys in the story and their boss fight. Miles looks around the rooms and sees a bunch of weapons for each person, each designated for a specific assassin. Miles grabs the stuff for Chameleon and notices that a chip that goes into the computer is lying on a table next to the suits. The computer shows a video of the 2 Spider-Men swinging around. Kingpin on the video mentions that there is a $5 million bounty per Spider-Man. So if you can kill both, that's $10 million for you. Miles tells Genki this, and they arrest Chameleon. So that is one of the assassins defeated out of 7. Miles begins to swing home when he gets attacked by Silk. Miles chases her and gets her on a roof, and is like, "Are you one of the people who was hired to kill me?" And after fighting her, Silk escapes but grabs a piece of her suit. We see Genki and Miles doing like a DNA test and finding out it's Cindy who was wearing the suit. Genki gives Miles an earpiece and at school tomorrow, he's going to try to spy on Cindy and figure out more about what's going on. Miles first goes to MJ and tells her about the assassins and tells her to be extra careful about Peter and make sure no one can get into his room. MJ tells him what the assassin looked like, and Miles realizes Silk is the one that injured Peter. So the scene would change to Brooklyn Visions the next day, Brooklyn Visions Academy. Miles starts sneaking around after school and starts to follow around Cindy, and he follows her to Kingpin Tower. We see her there along with Ringmaster Vermin, and Morbius. Kingpin is in his chair, and Miles listens in. He would go inside secretly and hear their conversation. The conversation is about how one of the assassins has already been taken, and they don't know where Cletus and Wade are. Silk mentions that Miles talked about the assassins and that he knows about them. Kingpin says they need to be more careful now since the other Spider-Man will be getting better soon. Other Spider-Man meaning Peter. Suddenly Miles trips an alarm, and on his way out you have to fight a ton of little Kingpin guards. Basically. Vermin, who is almost like a giant-sized rat, in case you guys don't know who that is, he's a pretty unknown character. That was kind of my idea here. I wanted to see some unknown and popular characters in this game. But anyway, Vermin chases after Miles and gets in a fight with him. The fight is on the edge of Kingpin Tower, and Miles defeats him before the other assassins can catch up. Miles is taken to a secure asylum and some cops interrogate him. The scene changes to Peter, who has recovered a little bit, now working out trying to gain his strength back. Miles walks in and they chat. Also, for those confused, I don't think Peter retired at the end of Spider-Man 2. I just think he took a break, and there was a little gap between these two games, so that's not an issue anymore. I also wanted to mention that all throughout the story, Miles and Haley have been getting in fights since he's never been around, and she is having to do all this schoolwork since he's been dealing with this. They get in an argument, and Haley wants to take a break. Don't worry, Miles is not going to pull a Ross. Well, let me explain. Miles knows that he needs to stop Cindy, so he goes to her house and lies and says he has changed his mind and wants to date her. They kiss, and Cindy takes him to a rooftop. Miles puts a suit on and follows her home. He confronts her as Spider-Man and says if she helps, then he won't turn her in. After a fight, she agrees, and she meets him in the warehouse. She tries to get his identity, but he refuses. She tells him about Cletus Cassidy leading some weird cult and tells him their location. The next mission, we actually play as Silk. Miles is there too, but I think it'd be fun if we just played as more than just Miles, so it'd be cool to play as Silk. We beat up a bunch of that flame cult from that side mission, and then Cletus appears. He'll say something about how he's going to tell Kingpin that she's working with Spider-Man, and then the symbiote starts to come out of his mouth, and he becomes Carnage. Carnage was heavily set up in the Flame side mission, which was in Spider-Man 2, and now he's a full-on character who will be very important, and you'll see why in a second. We get a boss fight with Carnage, where we play as Silk and Miles back and forth, and we also fight venomized cult members. That'd be a lot of fun, so I'm adding it. After defeating Carnage, he tries to escape, but Miles uses loud noises and fire, and this is stuff he learned from defeating Peter, and takes off the symbiote off of Carnage and puts it in this tube or something. Cletus gets in a car and tries to warn Kingpin, and we have a nice little car chase mission where we play as either Miles or Silk and try to get from car to car, stopping the cult members and getting to Cletus. But it's too late. Kingpin shows up and tells Silk that she better get home quick because they know her identity. They rush to Silk's house and they see Morbius beating up Albert and almost killing him. Albert is the dad, in case you didn't know. Silk is infuriated and tries to kill Morbius, but Morbius sucks both Miles and Silk into this dark dimension filled with black. We fight a bunch of Dark Shadow guys, and then we have a Morbius boss fight. And after defeating Morbius, Silk goes to kill him, but Miles gets in the way and they fight. After defeating Silk, Miles reveals his identity to try to calm the situation down, but it doesn't help. Silk then tries to kill him, but Miles shocks her into the wall, and when he turns around, she's gone. He goes to find Albert, but he's gone as well. The scene changes to Miles going into his apartment and calling Genki. Genki shows up and starts to patch him up when Miles says he placed a tracker on Silk so he can find out where she is. That's when we see a cutscene of Ringmaster mind-controlling Silk and putting her into a car with him. Ringmaster is a villain who no one really knows about, but I think he'd be a cool, obscure villain to include and make him a little more of a menacing character than he is in the comics. His power is pretty much mind control. So anyway, he records a video and makes her tell him Spider-Man's identity. So basically, Ringmaster now knows Miles' identity. Ringmaster records a video of Silk all beat up and tied in a chair. He sends it to Miles and Miles sees it. Genki says he's too hurt, but Miles says he's the only one that can stop this, so he has to do it. Miles uses the tracker to find a dark warehouse where Silk is tied in a chair. Miles unties her and tries to wake her up, but Ringmaster gives him headaches and makes Silk wake up. A bunch of mind-controlled bystanders appear, and we are forced to defeat them and mind-controlled Silk. After stopping them, we see Ringmaster, and we start to beat him up, but Ringmaster mind-controls Miles. That's when Prowler shows up and beats the snot out of Ringmaster. That sets up a side mission for Prowler where we get to play as Prowler, and the whole mission is about Prowler trying to find Miles, so that kind of shows how we got here. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Prowler frees Miles from the trance, but Ringmaster pulls out a gun, but Miles shoots a web and hits Ringmaster with his own gun, hitting him in his nose. Prowler forces Ringman to grab Albert and bring Albert back to the apartment after patching him up. Cindy and Miles get in an argument, but Miles says they need to stop Kingpin, and he will still not turn her in if she helps. Cindy mentions that Deadpool, Wade Wilson, has been providing weapons and new suits and looking for the bounty. Cindy mentions that all the assassins with new suits were designed to make it more difficult for the Spider-Men to defeat them. Miles is the last assassin left for them to defeat. And the scene changes to Kingpin finding out all the assassins are defeated except for Deadpool. Kingpin messages Wade and warns him that he is the last bounty hunter left, and Wade says he won't let Kingpin down. We see Prowler talking with Miles, and he says he's not going to use Prowler again, but he needs to help Miles with this one. Also, guys, in case you didn't know, Aaron Davis / Prowler lives close to Miles, so that will be mentioned, and I'm sure they'll have a few conversations throughout the story before everything goes down. Miles goes back to Genki, and Genki tells him that Haley is trying to speak with him. That's another side mission where Haley says she's sorry and she wants to get back together. Yeah, she doesn't do much in the story, but I mean, she's kind of useless, so, whatever. We see Miles going to Kingpin's building, and after beating up his goons, he talks with Kingpin. Kingpin says that he will die, but Miles says the whole thing was recorded, and that was his plan. But Kingpin said he knew that, and that's when Deadpool shows up and stabs Miles right in the back and throws him through the window. Miles almost crashes when Silk rescues him. She takes him to the top and Deadpool shows up. He cracks some jokes and Silk defeats Deadpool. Obviously Deadpool can't die, so she shoots her webs and sticks him into the floor. But we're not done with him yet. Silk tries to grab Miles and starts to swing away, but he's too strong and she struggles. The scene changes back to Miles sleeping in a bed. He goes downstairs, and that's when MJ, Peter, and Cindy are there. Peter saw them on the news and went out there and helped Silk bring them back. Peter explains that Cindy told them everything and that they're going to work together to stop Kingpin. We see a sequence of them making a plan and all that boring stuff. So, during the final fight, the three swing towards Fisk Towers, and they notice a bunch of tanks guarding the place. Deadpool is in the big one with a bunch of new armor, and after webbing and destroying all the tanks, you blow up the big one, the one with Deadpool in it. We defeat a bunch of guards, and then notice Kingpin with some huge armor on, and he's like, I guess I must kill the spiders myself. That's when Deadpool comes back in. He looks a little burnt, but he's good. We have a boss fight where Peter and Silk stop the guards, and Miles fights Deadpool. After defeating him, we have the boss fight and defeat Fisk. The ending is all the assassins in prison. We see Cindy talking with Miles. She thanks him for not turning her in, and that's when the game ends. There's also probably an end credit scene setting up the Sinister Six with Spider-Man 3 video. Now, let's talk about some other things in the game. There won't be a lot of side missions, but there'll be a few. Prowler and Haley was already mentioned, but there can be one where Miles and Peter work together and do some things. We can also have one about visiting the assassins in prisons, and maybe one about visiting Albert in the hospital. Not many, but that's not really what I'm focusing on here. The map will most likely be the same as Spider-Man 2, and because of that, I'll make the game a little cheaper than $70. There's a lot of drama with the first game feeling like a DLC and not deserving to be its own game, and I agree. I'm actually working on a video about that, but that's for another time. I guess the game should be around $50, and since it'll have its own suits and side missions, but it still isn't a huge change to Spider-Man 2, so I'll make it a little cheaper. So that's all. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll do one for Spider-Man 3 if this video does well. Love you all, and stay geeky.